Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Living Hope, a weekly journey designed to provide hope, inspiration, and education for those living with pancreatic cancer, sharing the real-life stories of those really affected by this deadly disease and how they deal with it on a daily basis. Well, today we're going to talk about dealing with it in very specific terms, I believe here. Roberta Luna, she knows a little bit about this topic.
Just a little. Thank you, Paul. Today we have Karen Mooney with us as our special guest. Thank you, Karen, for coming. We greatly appreciate it. Karen is a board-certified registered nurse with more than 12 years of inpatient oncology experience at an acute care hospital, correct?
Yes.
No, thank you for joining us. We're really happy to have you here today.
Oh, I'm very, very glad to be here.
Oh, thank you. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a registered nurse at a local hospital. I've been on an oncology unit for almost 13 years now. I went into nursing as a second career late in my 30s, decided after having a hospitalization myself that I was going to go back and become a nurse. I was beyond blessed to wind up in the oncology unit at the hospital during my studies, and just immediately felt an attraction to the oncology patients, and then it just went on from there. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm a member of the Oncology Nursing Society, the national and the Orange County chapters. Try to stay involved in that as much as possible, and just working with my patients brings me nothing but joy and hopefulness.
It's really nice to hear because it's really important, for patients to have that care. And for personally, my nurses were really awesome, and I just really respect you as a nurse and all the nurses out there. I don't think we give you enough credit sometimes, but you had quite a career change because weren't you like a data technician or something
Yes,
previously?
actually, so many years ago, decades ago, started out as a secretary in Long Beach Unified School District, actually, and worked my way up through there and wound up being the school data tech for Wilson High School for 5 or 6 years before I left and became a nurse. So yeah, I left from computers to thinking I was going into something that was not going to be involved with computers. But nowadays, with medicine the way it is, your charting is one of your fundamental aspects. So.
Right, but quite a change. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get personal, but you said you looked into it because you were a patient yourself.
Yes.
What chose you? I mean, oncology. That's a tough field. Why did you choose oncology of all fields out there?
This is I don't know. I think it's just it was I think it was meant to be. So when I look back on it, when I was going to college in my early 20s, one of the classes that I had to take, or I chose to take, excuse me, not had to, was Aging, Death, and Dying. I was 21 when I took that class. I had never thought really so much about. I'd had a couple of people pass in my life, but I didn't think about it. After taking a semester of Aging, Death, and Dying, it almost has been that it's just been in the front of my face now that our lives are short, everyone dies, and it's just been something that has always been on my mind and heart. So I kind of think that just naturally led me into the oncology. It's something that's fascinated me, but I've also been frustrated my entire life by people unwilling and unable to deal with the fact that we're all going to be there one day in one way or another. So I think that kind of melded, and it just that was the attraction.
Yeah, you're right. It is tough because I know we were talking earlier. It seems like when somebody is dying or passing or leaving, we use other words. We don't say the word death or dying. We say passing away. We lost them, and I always have a hard time. I would rather use the word dying, but people get offended sometimes when I do. So it's tough because it's not. We didn't lose them. We know where they are. You know,
Right.
and like I said,
And I'm not sure that people get offended. I think we think they are because they get defensive. I think they're just, as we were talking about, we have a culture here of youth, of we're never going to leave this earth. We're going to look younger and younger. 50's the new 40, 40's the new 30, etc. I think people don't like to talk about death because they just don't want to deal with it. And yet that's when the problems happen, because you are going to deal with it. So caregivers are going to be taking care of elderly family members, or whether it's through cancer, aging process, any other illnesses or whatever. But it's a difficult subject because we have to face our own mortality when we are talking about that.
What do you think is the best way to approach for families to approach that and talk about that? I mean, I want to do that before I'm on that deathbed or before that's happening. I want to be able to approach that and talk with my family about it. What is the best way to approach that?
So depending on your family, depending on your level of comfort with having hard to discuss talks, there's a couple of different ways, and I've read up on it. I've used a few of them. And with some families, it works better with humor. So I've actually had and talked with some parents that have said to their adult children, okay, we're going to have a dinner on Sunday. We want you guys to come. And they'll have a family dinner. And as the dinner starts, the parents are, okay, we are now talking about our family trust and our advanced care information. So sometimes the kids are like, well, wait a second, we don't want to talk about that now. We'll discuss it, when the time comes. But the realization has to be, if you don't have in writing and have the conversations with the people that you love and trust for how to make decisions of what you want when you can't talk for yourself, you're doing everybody a disservice, because chaos will ensue. You will have a variety of people's opinions on what should be done, and it may be what you would have wanted, or it may be what you didn't want to have happen. So to have those conversations, the holidays, honestly, are a really good time. You have people that are coming in from out of state to take somebody out to a breakfast, to take a son and a daughter-in-law, or a daughter-in-law and a son-in-law, take them out and say, we need to discuss this. I want you to understand, if I couldn't speak for myself, this is what I would want, or this is what I wouldn't want, and have it in writing. So our forms, there's a lot of different forms in California. You can download them online. So a durable power of attorney for healthcare is obviously one that you want to be very serious about. You want to make sure that you pick the person who is going to do what you want them to do, not what they want to do. Husbands and wives often think that it's going to be their spouse that's going to speak for them, so that they don't need to appoint anybody. But maybe that spouse is in an emotional area where they cannot handle the thought of losing their loved one. So whatever they can do to keep that loved one alive, no matter what, in whatever shape they may be, they're going to do that. So it may be that the person needs to choose an adult son or daughter, or a friend who knows that, no, they don't want a feeding tube. No, they don't want to live on a ventilator. No, they don't want to be, they don't want to be kept alive if they cannot do X, Y, or Z. So you have to have somebody that's going to do what you want. And it may not be the person that you think. And if you don't have it in writing, it will be by law the person who is closest. So it will be your spouse. And if your spouse isn't there, it will be an adult child. So the law will go down by that. So those are the things that you have to start thinking about earlier rather than later.
You do, and I think one of the worst things, and I think the best thing my doctor said to me when he gave me my diagnosis, was go home and put your house in order. That did two things to me. It made me very angry and made me want to fight, but it also made me stop and realize, he's right. I need to get certain things in order. And being the control engineer that I am, I certainly did that right down to the music list, right down to we're doing shots of tequila when it's my time to go. And, so I've got it very well planned out. And luckily we have talked to our kids about it and everything. But I do think you're right. Sometimes you need to go outside the family to get somebody to make sure those wishes are taken care of, because the hardest thing is when you're there and you're about to lose that parent or that loved one, you do want to keep them. But sometimes I think the greatest thing you can do out of love is to realize it's time to let go, but it's difficult. And being a nurse and you being in that position, how do you deal with when that time is coming? I mean, you've been in it for almost 13 years. It's got to be an emotional stress for you as well.
So when we have a patient that we know is actually, at my hospital, we do a couple of different things, and most hospitals are similar. If a patient is actively passing and they're unable or unwilling to go home, then there is a set of procedures typically for pain control, anxiety control, things like that. So the comfort measures are put into place. Sometimes it's via a hospice. So at our facility, we will use an in-house hospice that will drive those orders and all. As far as dealing with the family and emotionally, I mean, we're always hoping that the family is there. I've seen everything from the good to the bad. I've seen it done very well, where you have a warm, loving family that is surrounding this patient. Maybe there's singing in the room. There's visiting, depending on the patient. We can have patients that may be passing for a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks. We have had a couple of cases where individuals could have gone home, but because of maybe younger children there or their cultural beliefs, they did not want to pass away in the family home. So they chose to stay at the hospital. Those cases are pretty gut-wrenching for the staff, because this is a person that is sitting there like you or I conversing with you, and each day you know it's happening quickly, and each day you see them change. That is harder on the staff than if it's somebody that has been very ill, maybe in our ICU unit, where then they're extubated, they're unconscious, they're brought to our unit, and in the matter of a day or two they pass, but you don't have that emotional interaction with the person, right, because they haven't been alert and able to talk with you. The ones that you do see, and this was a beautiful, beautiful story, and I will tear up with this one. There was a lovely lady she was 90 or 91 this last summer. They knew she was, because of her illness, they couldn't do anything. She was internally bleeding, and there wasn't anything that could be done. So they knew it was just going to be a couple of days. They brought her to our unit. She sat there, and they did not want her to be put. She wasn't in pain, mind you. She wasn't in pain, so she didn't need to have any morphine or anything like that. She wanted her family to come quickly. There was a granddaughter, a son, a daughter-in-law, and a family friend. And so they quickly got there that afternoon. She was starting to get a little bit tired because she was actively bleeding, and it was happening quickly. Her friend took me aside and said, she has a little dog at home. She just wants to say goodbye to her dog, but it's not a service animal. Could we bring this service animal or this non-service animal in? I asked the security guard, and he said no. And I looked at her and I said, let's go. Get the dog. I will put the dog under my coat. I will do whatever. She's going to have the dog. The dog wouldn't let me hold it. It was going to bite me. But the friend brought the dog up, sat the dog on my patient's lap. They were all there. Then they left after a couple of hours, and the son said to me, I'm going to stay until my mom's asleep. And it was a beautiful passing. Her son was with her, holding her hand until she fell asleep, and she passed a few hours later. Those are the positives. They got to say what they wanted. There was closure. It was tying up. Those are beautiful moments. I will cry. I will go home and cry.
Thank you.
But we're going to be there.
Yeah.
So for the patients to have that, and for their family members to know that they told their loved one what they wanted to tell them, there's no regrets.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it's something. I was with my mom when she passed, and I had my ear to her heart, and I knew when she went. And I know it sounds weird, but that was the most beautiful moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
She was with me when I was born. I was with her when she died, and
Mm-hmm.
it just was very special. But now you got me tearing.
Sorry.
I know it's what we're here for. We got to
Yep.
get these stories out. We know, and I can see your passion for caring for the patient. I want your passion as well for the caregiver's journey as well. What can you explain a little bit who and what a caregiver is?
So, in my opinion, and that's all I've got here, my opinion, the caregiver is anyone who is actively involved in helping that person in any way. So, the caregiver can be a friend who is bringing meals. A caregiver can be the husband or wife, the adult children, anybody that is there involved. The caregiver is somebody who's actually offering care. But that's how I frame it. They're offering they are giving care. It may be emotional care, it may be financial care, it may be physical care, um, it may be housekeeping care. But it's somebody that's there with that person and engaged and acknowledging to that person the journey that they are on and the fact that they need support. I don't feel a caregiver is somebody, as we were talking about earlier, somebody who, oh, I'm so sorry you're sick. Let's talk about something else.
Mm.
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that that you're not feeling well. But I've got kids to take care of. I've got things to do. So caregiving is that entire community of support from those that want and are invested in you.
Very true. And without our caregivers, as a patient survivor, I can tell you they're very, very important. Even those of us that fight it, best advice I can give to anybody going through any kind of illness or anything, let people help you because sometimes they feel that's all they can do.
Yes.
There's so much,
Yes.
so.
And I will this may come up anyway, but I never want to forget this. One of the things I always tell my patients and their families is right now start writing down a list of anything that you need help with. Anything. I mean, taking the trash out on Sunday night so it can be picked up Monday morning. Groceries to be picked up on Tuesday at Trader Joe's. I would love to have 3 tubs of wash done Saturday morning. I'd like to have the beds, changed on Friday afternoon. You start making a list now. I need the kids picked up from school Mondays and Fridays. But you start making a list of concrete items so that when somebody, very well meaning, everybody wants to help, but they don't know how, you are going to give them a job. That really is a gift. It's a gift to the friend, the caregiver, because they want to help so badly. But so often, and I've been guilty of this so many times, saying, please let me know what you need. You never
Yeah.
feel the person that is going through it or the family, they don't want to bother anybody. And that's where I always say, you'll have your turn to pay it forward. You can pay it forward, but this is your turn to take.
And that's very good advice, and it's very true. And as, like I said, a patient, it's very difficult to ask for help, but it's something that I've learned, and I'm still learning. Trust me, I'm still learning. It gives that person also something like they feel like they're doing something because you need to feel like you're doing something, especially when you have no control over a disease. You just feel like you need to do something. So, from your experience, what do you feel caregivers need?
So caregivers, and this is really it's so important because we know when we're looking at statistics, so often caregivers die before the people that they're caregiving for because they're so beat up caregiving, they end up succumbing to an illness, a heart attack, a stroke, whatever. Their stress level is exponentially greater even than sometimes the person that is sick. So caregivers need respite. Caregivers need help. And that's when it's so important. So not just the patient asking for help, but it's the caregivers, it's the family that are supporting the ill person in the family. Those people need help with everything that they're dealing with. So really, when I'm saying making a list, it's just as important, if not more important, for the caregiver to make a list of what they need help with, and functioning within that list is just some time off, some time off to breathe, some time off to go and take a 6-hour nap in the middle of the day, or to go and get their hair done, or just to go out to lunch with some of their friends. And there are respite programs. I know that it's very specific area to area. I was talking with you earlier, Laguna Woods, because Laguna Woods has a really good social work office, and they've got resources for the people that live within Laguna Woods. So I always recommend that people check that out. If it's, we had a patient just the other day at the hospital that the patient is very ill. The wife is struggling, and she doesn't have a lot of resources within her family, but he is a member of VA. So the VA has a lot of resources, but you have to go on the internet and find them. If you have with cancer, there's a lot of different areas of resource, and I've talked with you before about a website that even has resources on it, and it's chemocare.com. It's out of the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, but it can be used by anybody throughout the states. There's a lot of good resources on there, both for information and then also to segue. I think the Angel Network is one of the supporters of it, so that's a network that can be looked into for assistance. Caring Bridge here in Orange County is one of the resources that I recommend people to go and check. And then, depending on individuals' insurance, if a patient is under a palliative care program or a hospice program, a lot of those individual programs will have respite care that is available for the caregivers, and I highly recommend those to be used.
Yes, thank you. And I know you brought a couple of books with you. We're running short on time now, but if you just want to real briefly, and we'll also make sure to put that in the summary afterwards.
So real briefly, my 2 Bibles for what I do. One is called Living at the End of Life. This is by Karen Whitley Bell. It's a fabulous book. We use it in our palliative care group at my hospital all the time. This is brand new because I'm constantly giving my copies to patients and their family members. This is a fabulous resource for information. And for caregivers, this is my Bible, The Caregiver's Path to Compassionate Decision Making by Vicki Kind. And this is an amazing book that will it's not for neither of these books are for medical people. These are for the families and the patients themselves. But the Caregiver's Path really helps caregivers look at the ethical way of dealing with their family members through all stages. And so it literally is written for caregivers making choices for patients who cannot make choices on their own through their journey.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for coming here today and sharing your journey with us. We have so much more to talk about. I'd love for you to come back and do another episode with us.
I'd be honored to.
Great. Thank you. And we dedicate each episode to somebody affected by pancreatic cancer. And since we're just out of November, which is Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, I also realized it was National Caregivers Appreciation Month. So this episode of Living Hope is dedicated to all of our caregivers. Our caregivers are extremely important in the survivor patient's journey, and we really just couldn't do a lot without them. So this is dedicated to all of our caregivers. Thank you, and thank you, Karen,
Amen.
for coming. I want to really have you back and talk more. We have so much more to talk about. But
I would
thank
love
you.
to. Thank you so
We
much. It was
appreciate
lovely being here.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Some real life advice from people who really know what it's like to go through this. If you know somebody that needs some help like this, there is a number you can call. It's Patient Services at 877-2-PAN-CAN. For more help and information, that's 877-2-PANCAN for the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. For those of us here at the OC Talk Radio Network, we thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us again for some more hope, inspiration, and education for those living with pancreatic cancer, sharing the real-life stories of those really affected by this deadly disease and how they deal with it, all of them, the family, the friends, the community, on a daily basis.